Welcome back to the podcast. Jamie and Laurence. Essentially, this is called The Graphic now. We're going to make a YouTube channel and we're going to put it on there in the end. So I think I'll put a link in the description. Hopefully it's down there. If you see it, you see it. If not, check the Discord server that I've got. I've now got a Discord server. I don't know how to add. Do you do Discord?
Not yet.
Okay. I do Patreon and Discord now.
I saw the Patreon.
Yeah.
Picking up
There's some members, you know. There's I think 10 people in there now. It's pretty good.
It's pretty cool.
It's cool. It's cool to see. But there's also people who've got 5,000 Discord members and, 2,000
I know, but
Patreons.
you're new to the game here. This is like a week-old mission.
I know, but when you look at it, and it's not that I'm ungrateful to any of the people who've joined. Those people are fantastic. But when you look at it and you go, that person's got 5,000 Patreons. And then you think day one, it's going to be 5,000 people go, yeah, why not? It's not, you play the percentages game is essentially what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, well, exactly.
But not in a good way.
We'll see how good the pod is. Maybe we'll get to 5,000.
Who knows? Yeah. The pod obviously comes as part of the package. Jamie also comes as part of the package because in the last podcast,
guys.
Some people thought there was an undertone.
They're perceptive.
Yeah. So Jadon Sancho has left Manchester United, not on a permanent deal, and we'll talk about that in a second. He's gone back to Borussia Dortmund. Top line thoughts?
2. 1, it's the only move that made sense. I don't know there was another club probably that would be willing to take a punt and could afford a percentage of the wages.
He's one of those players who looks like he should be in a Borussia Dortmund kit.
Yeah.
Weird, isn't it?
It's weird, even seeing him for now a couple of years at United.
Yeah.
You couldn't escape the shadow of that yellow shirt.
Yeah, that's so true. That yellow shirt is kind of a big thing. Now, maybe the reason you couldn't escape that shadow is because it didn't quite look right. Jude Bellingham, as much as it pains any Liverpool fan to say, looks right in a Real Madrid kit. Lots of people who left Klopp looks right with Liverpool. There's lots of combinations where once they've left, they can kind of shed their caterpillar cocoon.
Where do you think the aesthetic fitting or not fitting comes from? Because it's clearly coming from somewhere, and you can call it. You can say Klopp looks right. Bellingham looks right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'm referencing when I say something like Sancho looks right in the Dortmund kit.
Well, do you know what I was thinking this with certain Italian clubs? They've got kits and colours that just don't look. They look so generic and almost generated that they don't look right. So they never look right. Like Lucas Leiva played in a Lazio kit. I actually happen to think Napoli's kit and that colour, I never really see anyone in that kit that I think Napoli player, apart from Hamšík. And that's it. I can't think of anywhere else where I look at it and I go, you are that forever.
Yeah, even Koulibaly.
Mm-hmm. Koulibaly.
Who was Mr. Napoli.
Kim kind of looks weird in a Bayern kit, but he kind of looked right in the Naples
red
kit.
looks good on him.
The red looks pretty good on him. But you know what I'm saying? There's that combo. Whereas, if you look at Xabi Alonso in a Liverpool kit, in a Real Madrid kit, in a Bayern kit, maybe it's also the face. Maybe there's a makeup of what I think a player that can go from multiple different clubs looks like. Maybe it's that Xabi Alonso played in. Maybe he chose his palette very well throughout his career. He was like, I only do red or white.
Here's a question. When you used to play football, what colour kit would you be least pleased to see on the opposition in the warm-up? Which colour kits do you think, Jesus, we're in for a game here? I found if they were wearing black and white stripes,
interesting. Yeah,
I used to think, Jesus,
take them seriously.
This is going to be elbows and shins.
I think just at the more pure football the kit, the more likely you are to get a game. So we used to play a team who wore, back in the day, they used to be these kind of half and half Nike things, but it was more like a two-tone. They used to do this thing with black and white. This was more like white and slightly different white. And they had that with black sleeves. I remember the team turned up and I looked at them all and I was like, that kit is serious. You guys are serious. Who buys a white kit? That's so boring. I know Spurs fans obviously.
With black sleeves
with
too.
With black sleeves. I was literally because what they were looking like was they were looking like a 1950s World Cup team.
Jesus.
Do you know what I mean?
Corinthians vibe almost.
Yeah, exactly like that. And I looked at it and just went, oh, you guys are going to be one of those games. I know I'm going to get kicked.
The other thing you used to watch out for is if someone was really quick on their team in the warm-up, you think, Jesus.
Damn, look at that guy.
We're going to drop 10 yards today.
Did you ever see, obviously it's become a thing recently, Ben Foster asked the a question of Jurgen Klopp where he said, you're trying to intimidate people on the halfway line before. And Klopp kind of played it off, which I'm kind of... it doesn't surprise me that Ben Foster didn't follow that up. But like, you get what I mean. Yeah. He just sort of went, he knew what he was doing. And he went, I've only intimidated the opposition once. And I'm like, sure.
Also, he's quite imposing, Klopp, isn't he?
Super imposing. In person, I remember meeting him in person and being like, that is an imposing figure. And when I felt like I'd annoyed him, I was like, uh-oh. Like, he's big. He's wide. He's like, he's also got an aura about him. So there's a whole load of stuff where it's all mixed up. And then when you see him on TV, he looks just as big, weirdly. Like, people seem to lose a bit of their height on TV. He gains height, or at least he is the height. And that's gaining height, as far as I'm concerned.
I watched the Arsenal-Liverpool game last week with a friend. And his dad's Irish, and he's about 75 odds.
Yeah.
And he isn't a football fan. And just said, I can't stand seeing that guy with his hair and his teeth and his beard. And I thought to be fair, those are the features.
Yeah. Although he's had hair done, teeth done. I don't think he's had his beard done.
Firmino and him have the same teeth guy.
I think Coutinho had the same, loads of them had the same teeth guy. Anyway, Jadon Sancho has gone to Dortmund. He did it. He's announced it in quite passive-aggressive ways, liking Fabrizio Romano's Instagram post or tweet, changing his picture on Instagram, I think, with Bayern socks on. It might not be him. It might be a team of people. I don't know if that many football players are really that good at cropping. But it's kind of interesting to see this like almost passive-aggressive breakup that's going on between him and... I can't work out if it's Manchester United or if it's Erik Ten Hag, and therefore he doesn't want to upset Manchester United. He just wants to upset Erik Ten Hag. Do you know what I mean?
The weird thing that hasn't been picked up on since this broke was, obviously, like last year he took a few months off to get his head right, etc. And Ten Hag was a big supporter of that,
seemingly,
and was buzzed to have him back and all of the rest.
Yeah.
I mean, the interesting question I have for you is, he cost a lot of money, big wages, good footballer.
He is, and
Ten Hag has failed to. Possibly for good reasons, but nonetheless failed to make him a part of this United side. Do you take the view either A, that like, well, he didn't play the game of the gaffer, he had to go, or is it a failure of flexibility that's meant that he won't play and be involved for half a season and sold for 30 mil, for instance?
You could kind of evaluate it both ways, because when Ten Hag went in, I was like quite excited to see him play Jadon Sancho, because Sancho had seemingly all the qualities of a player who would fit under Erik Ten Hag. Technical ability, good reading of the game. You don't necessarily need to be pacey to play under Ten Hag, because he's had a few players who lack that. Ziyech, Anthony, like
Tadic.
In fact, Tadic was the guy I always think of, because I always thought Tadic was really good for Ajax.
I watched the Instagram Reels highlights of his game against Real Madrid.
He was good. He was really good, and he played for Southampton.
Am I making up that Graziano Pella was up front for them? No, that Ajax team. There was the other Graziano Pella played up top.
But there's another Graziano Pella. There's like two of them.
No. Well, Graziano Pella, we won't get into now, but he was the best-looking man, not to fuel any undertone rumours.
No, but he definitely was.
He was notable.
Graziano Pella. He was good for... There you go. Who did he play for? He played for Southampton. He played for Feyenoord. He didn't play for Ajax. So you are wrong.
I am wrong. In fact, I'm probably as wrong as I could be.
Pretty interesting career, though. Lecce, Catania, Crotone, Cesena, AZ, Alkmaar, I'm guessing.
Yeah, Dutch.
Parma. Finished his career at Parma as well. Sampdoria, Feyenoord, Southampton. Shandong Luneng.
He was relatively one of the first, wasn't he?
Made the big bucks, and then got his way back to Parma. No one accused him of forsaking the project halfway through.
No, and maybe that's something we'll get onto later.
Yeah, maybe he didn't spread the game enough in China, and that's probably why. Back to Sancho.
The point about Sancho, I just have to ask you here.
Yeah.
Is, do you think he is someone who's like lost his way a little bit and there's some attitude issues, but will nonetheless over the next 5 years hit some serious level of peak? Or do you see him as like a better Jesse Lingard?
Right, as in he's lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, lost to the streets or whatever it is. I feel like it's not really the time to damn him, because he's probably, clearly taken some time off for your mental or whatever it was that you needed to deal with at that time. Shows there's some pain or trauma in his life. Trauma doesn't need to denote something like a horrific, but you get what I mean. On top of that, I think I watched the reels and I still think a lot of those skills don't leave you, but I see that he has. He's not necessarily, it's not like pace that he's bases his game on.
It's more instinctive. It's body
quite
weight
light
shifts.
feet. Yeah, and maybe, I'm not sure that leaves you, is what I'm saying. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Then, I also think I don't want to judge someone before they finish, I think the choice to go back to Dortmund is a smart one. So it's the smart that, someone who's not making good decisions, I'm not sure goes back to Dortmund. Someone who's making good decisions maybe wants an element of comfort, somewhere he feels comfortable, somewhere that he knows they like him. That seems quite smart. That's someone who's thinking about the construction or reconstruction of a career, which has kind of gotten away from him. And frankly, I'm not 100% sure that it's all down to attitude. Now, a few Man City friends of mine were saying, I know I have Man City friends, they're people I know happen to support Man City. I didn't pick them because of that. Are you glory hunting your friends? Yeah.
You mean European Cup representation?
The three people you hang out with the most, you're most likely to win the league if you hang out with people who've won the league more. I think specifically, that would actually be an interesting thing to do, by the way. Like, the fact that Liverpool and Man City, they used to hang out quite a lot, all the Brazilians like Fernandinho, Alisson, Fabinho, all those guys. They say that your closest circle, so like your immediates, the closest 5 people, you're more likely to like raise yourself to their income level than, and like high tide raises all boats or whatever. I wonder if it goes the other way where like City won the title and all the Liverpool players are hanging out with them. And then they're like, like that's the lifestyle it takes to win the league. And they kind of learn little things. So actually like the idea of hanging out and being friends is fine. But the idea of hanging out and like micro adjustments and micro observations that you can make might actually be negative overall for Man City and possibly for Liverpool if they hang out with other people.
It's a real thing. When Wenger went to Arsenal, the players would go to England and the other players would say, oh, you guys aren't drinking anymore. Or what's that you're eating?
Right.
What's yoga?
Right. They did yoga?
Yeah.
I guess I forgot about that. I know about the toothbrush and the fountain or the waterfall in the dressing room to always be around flowing water.
No.
I think that's Japanese thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, you just come back off a job.
Yeah. Wenger's fascinating. I'm not sure there's enough profiles of Wenger. Maybe I should do a profile of Wenger. So, Jadon Sancho. So what I'm saying about him is I think he's made a smart decision to go back to the Bundesliga. First of all, slightly different league. I think it's a very popular league at the moment. He's gone back to a club where expectation is very mixed. So there's no very high expectation for him to just go in and win the league straight away. And then on top of that, I also think there's a place where he can play his trade and a place where he can essentially be Jadon Sancho.
It's smart in one other way too, which is his biggest strength is transitional. And it's a very transitional league.
Dortmund are a very transitional team.
Yeah, and I have to say, by the way, in theory, and this isn't
Dortmund, by the way, on a 5-match run of draws.
That's quite unique.
That's like a lot of draws in a row. I've just gone to look it all up. That's like a lot of draws. The last one was a 3-3 against Standard Liège.
Well done them.
And they are struggling
That's also,
out
by the
on
way,
that wing. They're struggling on both wings, by the way.
But I was going to say, a 3-all draw is the most Dortmund kind of draw, which is where Sancho might benefit.
Right.
Just one other thing here, which is, okay, Ten Hag has backed off this now. Mm-hmm. He wanted United to control games rather than be this transitional team. In that context, I'm not sure Sancho makes a huge amount of sense. I mean, you can see Anthony came in because they weren't thinking they were going to play on the break. They thought they were going to control. At that point in time, the tactical blueprint was, let's control the game. Mm-hmm. Sancho might just fit in better in a team that's counter-attacking
and that's
rather
kind of
than
it.
one that transitions. I mean,
but so is Garnacho Garnacho feels a bit like a transitional player, although maybe he's got that kind of swagger where he feels. Also, Sancho could easily. I mean, there's got to be an element of coaching here. Well, you just spent a whole load of money on those people. You can't just go, not the one for me.
Is there any United players? I mean, this is just an open question. Aside from the ones that have come through the academy, where there's no reference point, have any United players in the last 5 years been bought and then improved? Like, if you're thinking down the line,
I think we've had this discussion on the podcast before, where we were like, I can't think of a player.
Aaron Wan-Bissaka is the real heartbreak case. Because
that's the one you're picking out.
Yeah, because he was 21, 50 million quid, world at his feet.
But they should never have spent 50 million quid on Aaron Wan-Bissaka. There were plenty of people close to the club at the time going, 50 million? But you have to remember, more of a 30 million pound player at a push, and that's in a Luke Shaw era.
Yeah, but Laurence, you're forgetting that Man United signings have to end in a 0 or a 5. So there's not that many options.
Right, okay.
And it's got to be above 45.
Okay.
So it's either 45, 50 or 100. And so actually...
Better to spend the 100.
Add some pressure.
Spend the 100 and just go, we believe in you, son. Because when it's 50, they go, we believe in you. And he goes...
Do you though? It's only at Man United, by the way, that a 50 mil splash is seen as a real vote of no confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. But now, obviously, he's gone back to the Bundesliga. I think he's got time to recoup. I think there's probably a route back into the England team for him. I think there are rumours about his attitude, which I think, there are plenty of players who have rumours about their attitude. Just watched a clip of a couple of different players actually talking about how when they went from from another league to the Premier League or from that vice versa, the transition problem or and how that can sometimes look a bit like, oh, he's got attitude issues. Like there's this story where we went to Canada to film with I think they're called the First Nations people now, but I can't remember what the term is. And they basically the original people to live in that part of the world. And they had a real problem because they were quite isolated, quite isolated from the main population of obviously like city dwellers and sort of people who were a bit more urban than them. They used to have quite a different lifestyle. So they used to have this lifestyle much more of, migrating around. And they couldn't do that anymore because the government had sort of put different things in place, such as dams which stop the water flowing in certain directions, so they couldn't any longer maintain their lifestyle, or they wanted to dam up certain parts, they have to move all their houses. All of this is to say that there was not much understanding between the two sets of people. Obviously, there's a lot of trauma outside of that in their lives, which obviously Jadon Sancho doesn't have. But the story that the chief of the tribe told us was once a year they would do like an exchange program where they kind of exchange people with the city. So they go, we'll send one to you and one to us. And so they would, but generally it was about, hey, bring someone to the city, show them the real world sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe a bit patronizing. And the chief basically said, like, when we sent some people down, the city people would come back and go, this guy's useless. Like, he can't, he's working the office and doing this stuff. And the chief's like, yeah, well, send one of your guys here and see if you can skin a beaver, or send one of your guys here and see if you can do this. So I'm saying it's like a contextual usefulness.
Attitude is a function.
Right.
Attitude is a function of context.
Absolutely. And that's kind of, that's a perfect way of putting it, because I'm basically saying your attitude sometimes follows these actions, which some people go, oh, he's lazy, he doesn't want to do it. And it's actually like, he doesn't know how to do it.
Well, yeah, and also like lazy, like... We like to assign people personality traits, lazy, hardworking, but really, like if we're being precise, it's lazy in this context, hardworking in that context. So
I'm reading Atomic Habits at the moment. I can't remember who the author is, but he's a really fascinating guy. And obviously, it's a very stripped down book. It's about habits. Sometimes it feels a little oversimplified, but broadly the concepts work. And one thing that he says in the book. There's a lot of really interesting things. It's a really good book. I'm going to do a video on it, and Atomic Habits and Footballers, which I think that could be a really fascinating topic. There's a whole series coming on this channel, by the way, of books mixed with football. So it's basically this book applied to football. And I'm thinking of starting with Atomic Habits, because Atomic Habits is like small little tweaks that you can make to your life that make it a lot easier. And in Atomic Habits, he says, broadly, people who have habits and are, switched on in that sense, they're not less lazy. They're not any of the more positive attributes that we assign to them. They just tend to be people, and they don't even have more or less self-control, actually. They actually just are thinking in habitual manners, which then facilitate the success in that environment.
And this is the book, The E-Myth, which was the big 90s small business book. Processes build businesses, not people.
Right.
Because people were flawed deeply. And we're on them, we're off them, we're lazy and we're hardworking, context dependent.
Right.
But processes or habits take over.
And understanding of those processes and habits is what makes people brilliant. Like, there's, obviously Steve Jobs and lots of other people understood how to get the best out of people. And they did that through adjusting the processes and the thought processes and the ideas within the companies. It doesn't mean that people aren't important to companies. It doesn't mean that the process is just bigger than all the people. But to an extent, it applies to Jadon Sancho and Manchester United.
Well, the other thing about Sancho, and I'm not trying to be speculative here, I'm just trying to make the point that we've been down this road in English football in the last couple of years where we've called someone lazy, i.e. Dele Alli, and then it's been retrospectively obvious there was some other thing going on.
Yeah.
There was some background trauma, there was something psychological happening. And I have no idea. I don't know Jadon Sancho. And I'm not speculating, but whenever we go publicly and say they're a disgrace, their attitude's shit, there's a little bit of a pause to go, you have no idea what the context is.
And around that, then, you know, the people being glad you've left their club or
resentful of you having been there. And
I get it, like, you
the
know,
money, people will go, hang on, but I've got the same mental health issues on 0.1% of the wages.
Yeah, and that's not really also a great comparison because, you know, there are many different magnifiers or amplifiers of lots of different people's mental health issues. There are going to be different triggers for different people. And I get it, like, people are going to probably be saying like, oh, you know, there's a generation of people who just talk about trauma, blah, blah, blah. Sure, doesn't negate the issues that some of those things cause.
There's a really interesting, Steven Pinker wrote this book, Enlightenment Now, and the premise, it's quite controversial as a premise because people read it as something that ends up being quite liberal and a bit of a fuck you to the left. But he basically argues that things are getting better. Things are getting better and better and better and better. And one of the topics he looks at is happiness/mental health.
Sure. And
he says, well, look, I know all these rates of things are going up and people are talking more about trauma, but that's only because it's been an option to talk about.
Right, and we're finding more trauma because it's the first generation where people are going, I've just identified trauma, but I didn't know how to identify before.
If you went into post-Thatcher communities, 3 years after industry shut and people were drinking all day, we previously didn't define that as trauma. We just said, oh, well, the mine's shut, obviously. Right. And now it's the exact same events. We're just looking at through a slightly different lens.
You've had your exact identity stripped away from you and all these kind of things, which is probably also what Jadon Sancho has, which is what, and again, not speculating on someone's mental health, but I'm sure there are elements of, when you have a new manager come into your club and you're on however big wages, you've had your dream move and, there are lots of other contributing brilliant factors which go to your momentum. And then someone goes, oh, you're not in my team. I'd imagine that can be quite difficult and also quite publicly humiliating for some people.
If your identity is as a footballer, your friends growing up at school, you're good at football. Your mum tells her friends, Jadon's doing so well, he's good at football.
Right.
And then you go to a club and you're famously, publicly, not good enough, not fitting in, whatever.
Or allegedly all of those things.
Yeah, according to the decision makers. Must be very, very difficult.
Yeah, really hard. And so I guess I kind of wish him all the best in that, as much as a Liverpool fan can wish a Manchester United player all the best, I wish him all the best. It's just a weird one because there is kind of a big what if there with him, I feel like. And maybe if he hadn't have gone to Manchester United, he'd have gone to a Liverpool, maybe gone to a Chelsea, maybe gone to maybe a Spurs. There's just so many different options. Maybe not Spurs because they had Son, but you get my point.
But it's actually an interesting thing because I hadn't thought about Spurs in the context of Sancho. Mm-hmm. I think they've just done brilliantly in as far as it's very little risk to bring in Timo Werner, who's the right, and Dragovic.
It's definitely
Dragon Man.
It's Drag.
But Sancho to Spurs, Christ. Transitional, counter-attacking, hyper. He can't really press, which is why they weren't interested.
Is that the other issue?
I think so.
Right.
I say he can't press, not because I really know that he can't press. I just don't. Dortmund weren't a big pressing side. United haven't been. If he can press, he hasn't done it publicly. It's been behind closed doors. It's like what we get up to post-podcast.
Listen, in private, I'm pressing everything. Yeah. What do you do? Did you see the way I came up to you? Yeah. I was pressing. Yeah.
One more thing just to say here. I just want to mention Thierry Henry because he did the interview with Stephen Bartlett and basically said, look, I grew up and my dad was very pushy and the repeated message and narrative was you're not good enough, and that stuck even when I was winning Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues, and I've probably been depressed forever, was a paraphrasing. And it just reminded me of the fact that there's young footballers I see online, not that I know of them personally and how they're really getting on 0.1% of the wage and probably less the success. But they're kind of making a living teaching English, playing football in Armenia, seeming to be having a decent time. And it just reminded me of the lack of relationship between on-paper success and internal well-being.
Yeah.
Just comparing apples and apples, footballers and footballers.
I get what you're saying. And I've not watched that Thierry Henry podcast. I think it's an interesting idea. That podcast has almost become a very interesting idea in itself, because big celebrities go on it to kind of talk about their pain. I don't really have a problem with people sharing that kind of thing, and I don't think it should really be policed. And in fact, I think seeing someone like Thierry Henry say these kind of things is pretty powerful to watch. The curation of it sometimes I struggle with, because they start the podcast. I watched the intro trailer, or dip your toe in here sort of thing. Pretty heavy hitting, and in a sense of it felt heavy hitting and heavy handed, quite sort of piano now and depression now.
Okay, but I think you're right. But I think from what
I'm not saying therefore he's not depressed, by the way. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just
in terms of the podcast curation, you are right. The only caveat is I think they are very switched on optimizing for one thing, not another. So they're optimizing for retention rates.
They're optimizing for retention and obviously people looking in.
Right. Whereas you are right that if you were to just look at it and go aesthetically, as a director, how does this look?
No,
you're correct in saying
the way it looked. Actually, again, it looks very nice, but not even the presentation, like the construction of it,
exactly,
feels. It made me feel a bit uncomfortable, and it made me feel a little bit. It from my perspective, my humble perspective, and I've got in trouble again before for critiquing other people's work. This isn't anything to do with charity. Isn't cheapen the product, but I feel like there is something in there with our huge stars and the way they speak and who they give the interview to, how they give the interview, the depth that they then go into after that, the carefulness with which people choose their words, or, like we were talking about before, context is everything. Depression is a very catch-all term, which I'd imagine a lot of us have struggled with at different points in our lives. Some people struggle with it all the time. Some people have had one episode of it. Some people have had lots of episodes of it. All of their descriptions of depression will be very different to other people's. I always find these kind of catch-all podcasts quite, not predatory, but quite sort of, I don't know. You know where I'm getting at.
Yeah. Also, the other side of this is you're a director, right? So you're like a food critic going to a restaurant. It's like I find your critique on these, you're a little bit sharper when it comes to like piecing these things together.
Maybe sharp is the wrong word, because I think there are going to be lots of people who are very, very sharp. But I get where you're getting
but you're used to, like, I don't necessarily think in terms of the construction of an interview. Whereas
you bloody should.
Whereas I apparently, as all viewers will know,
right? You bloody well should.
Totally off topic as we've ever gone here. Have you seen Saltburn?
No, I've actually been saving it because we've not really had the night for it, but everyone seems to come out of it and go, hated it, loved it, hated it, loved it. That's my other series on the channel, by the way, new series. I think it's a really fun series, and I actually think we need to do a dedicated podcast to every one of the episodes we shoot for this. What would happen if this person was the creative director of the Premier League, or this person was the person who decided how this goes? And it came to me the other night when I was watching a Stanley Kubrick film.
Stupid show.
And it was about obviously it was Eyes Wide Shut, which is all about the glitterati and the Illuminati and the movement of big, themes in society and, sex cults and all sorts of things, right? Not saying those things exist or not. Like, I don't want to get into the Epstein tapes or Bill Clinton.
That would be even for us a diversion.
Yeah. What would it be like if Jeffrey Epstein was the creative director of the Premier League? Oh. What I'm saying is
a lot of 39th games abroad.
Right? Yeah, a lot. Oh God, that was a really good joke, and that just went. I should have laughed like really heavily at that. Sorry, that was really good. I think I didn't laugh because I was actually angry that you did that and I didn't. So what I'm saying is, what would happen if Stanley Kubrick was the creative director of the Premier League? I think, from a film perspective, or at least just from a general perspective, the themes we focus on would be different. Because we focus on, I think Kubrick wouldn't worry about hiding the corruption or mistakes, and he'd actually focus on it and make it like he'd obfuscate it a little bit and make it a bit mysterious, and there'd be more mystery around the league and stuff. And I was just like, yeah, the Premier League is what it is because of the way we portray it, because of the strict control and rules that the Premier League have around portraying the Premier League. What would happen if you shifted the person at the top to be someone who went, actually, do you know what gets people going? Sex and mystery. And I feel like Stanley Kubrick would be like, you know what? I'm going to tell the press that Olivier Giroud fucked a woman in this hotel room the other night. And I'll do it the day before a game. And it'll just be like, yeah.
Or the Premier League could commission a show. You know how there's like now like Saturday Social?
Yeah.
But it's just the sleaze.
It's sleaze, but it's done in like a mysterious
Who
way.
would be the most frequent appearer on that show at ATM? I've heard rumors about Morgan Gibbs White. Not being sleazy, just
being a top. Yeah. I mean, those are purely rumors and we don't know. He might just be really great in bed with the one person. I think if I named someone, it would be bad. But off the podcast,
Jack Grealish went straight for Emily Attack after he became a household name. Forget the long-term relationship.
Sure.
He just was like, oh, the fit one from the In-Betweeners.
Yeah, because he likes the In-Betweeners though, not because he's vaguely attracted to another woman.
It's so Jack Grealish.
Yes, but that's...
He went Love Island, Emily Attack. It's the most like British footballer move.
In his mind, it's like it's when people refer to relationships as upgrades. Oh. In his mind, it's like an upgrade because she was on TV. She seems like a lovely person, actually.
No, she does seem very sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jadon Sancho is off to Dortmund.
Shit's sake.
No, but you get what I'm saying.
No, I hear you, yeah. I think we've decided it's basically a good move.
Great move. Bad for Manchester United. Again, shows poor planning, poor forward thinking. If they'd have stuck with the managers they had in the last era, then Jadon Sancho's probably doing really well. Although he didn't really play all that much in previous eras either.
I know you can't really override the manager, but if they wanted to have another 25 million quid to spend next year, they really would have done worse than say, Ten Hag, play nice, say something vaguely apologetic behind the scenes, bring him on in 10 games this season.
How do we know they didn't say that to Ten Hag and to Sancho, and that Sancho basically went, I'm going to go to more premieres, I'm going to do more of this stuff?
Because they got rid of Ronaldo. So I kind of think... by the way, that isn't actually responding to what you're saying directly, but through the method of vibe, it's like,
yeah.
If they trust him to bin Ronaldo, they're not fussed about that 25 million quid and making Ten Hag.
Maybe that's part of it. Maybe it is like, maybe this is early. I don't think actually that the Ineos guys are in any way at the head of the table for transfers, but I'd imagine there's been like some tentative conversations now where they're sort of like loan him out, do this, do that, similar to the way that Pep Guardiola had it at City, where a few years before they were like, what would you do if you were to come to the club? And he was like, I would probably create a bank account in Saudi Arabia and deposit all the money there. But you know what I'm saying? Dave Brailsford's all about the like 1% gains. I didn't get this from as much as we just criticized the Diary of a CEO. Dave Brailsford was on the Diary of a CEO. Very good clip on that.
Yeah, his guest's unbelievable.
His guest booker. I mean, once you've got the numbers, booking your guests is very simple. And
even so though, they do Thierry Henry and Alain Zobaton in the same week.
Yeah,
and it's like, God, like it's hard to watch this podcast with a semi. Do you know what I mean?
I've tried. It's the other aspect with it is. Yeah, let's not talk about that on the podcast. The word faux, just insert anything in there, always comes to mind for me whenever I go Diary of a CEO. I'm always just like, faux, intellectual, faux, whatever. Maybe some people think I'm the same. So there are, I don't remember where we transitioned. We just had a really great conversation off the podcast about kind of hypotheticals.
And what would have happened? And what would have happened?
What would have happened if? Now, basically, it kind of led on from players, sort of like players that you want to see go to certain places or whatever it is. Like, I actually think Timo Werner is a really good fit for Spurs.
He's an awesome fit, yeah.
And I actually think this Dragon guy is also a really good fit for Spurs, purely because they've beaten Bayern to a player. And beating Bayern to a player is like...
having offered less money.
Well, it's kind of...
Which is awesome. Because it's
that's massive. And it's Postecoglou.
Yeah, I mean, that is basically just Ange saying...
being Ange.
Yeah, essentially saying, listen, you'll play.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you'll be our third choice, and we sometimes play a back three, or we're going to kind of sometimes play a back three. But in any case, your third choice long term.
Right.
And we're going to trust you, and it's the right kind of profile. And also, by the way, we don't have any centre-halves.
And and Dyer's going the other way. Dyer kind of makes sense to me in a Bayern team, no?
A lot of sense.
Yeah, and in a weird way, like
He's risk-free as well. He's 4 million euros.
risk-free,
Oh,
very
he'll be
low,
90
speaks lots of languages, seems like a bit of a, not savant, but a polyglot. Is that the phrase? For someone who can speak lots of languages? Yeah?
Yeah, maybe.
right.
Yeah, maybe.
See, I've seen an interview with him. I walked in thinking we were going to get kind of like a, I thought we were good. Charmed the whole room. People loved him by the time they walked out. I was like, I want him in the England team.
I have a story about Eric Dyer, which is my friend is a Spurs fanatic.
Yeah.
She's been watching Spurs forever and ever.
Love that.
And her grandpa's first words to her dad was Jimmy Greaves. So they're obsessed. Anyway, they were in a restaurant and they said, "Oh, that's Eric Dyer," kind of thing. And there was some like charming British sitcom dropping of a fork, eye contact between. Anyway, and they had like some micro interaction. And he's like, "Oh, I'm a huge fan, blah, blah." And then when they went to pay the bill, they were like, "Oh no, Mr. Dyer's taking care of it."
Oh, you see, that's a nice feeling.
See, it's a nice
I bet
touch.
you'd love to do that.
It's a nice
That's
touch.
nice. And what I want to know is whether he went, how much was that table? And they went,
It's like
$2.50.
it's the extras episode where the extras episode where he goes into the shop.
Yeah.
And he thinks it's a Pretty Woman scenario.
Yeah.
Where he's like, she'll be having this dress. And it's like, that's £4,000.
Yeah.
Like, are you sure you want that? Look at me. Are you sure you want
exactly
that?
that. Yeah. How much was the? They
They got lobster.
Yeah, they got 2 lobsters. Wow. Can I pay for the drinks on that table? It's sort of a catch-all thing. Like we can't split the drinks off onto a separate bill.
We can let them know though that Eric said he would pay for a percentage of the bill.
Yeah. Eric said he'd pay for 25% of your overall bill, but then you went on to get the sides.
One other point here is just I think the way to do January, if you can, is risk-free. Meaning you're not going for the 10 out of 10 signing, but there's no downside to Werner and there's no downside to Dyer. And those are kind of the moves you want to make.
There are some big, the greatest ever January signings.
Nemanja Vidic, Patrice Evra.
January. Was he...
they both were, yeah.
I can't give Vidic the credit.
No,
but yeah, I can definitely... There you go. All done. Oh, that's just all the January transfer
Fernando
signings.
Torres.
Well, who came in post Fernando Torres? Luis Suarez and Andy Carroll. So Luis Suarez probably one of the greatest Premier League players, depending on how you feel about him, and Andy Carroll.
I used to love Andy Carroll.
Really?
Yeah.
I've seen Andy Carroll score one good goal live in my whole life, and it was in the final of what is now the Carabao Cup, I think.
Against Chelsea?
Yeah. Really good goal. In the penalty area it was took it really well, really great.
He's also like as much as I think he does have off-field stuff, as in like convictions and stuff, he's always interviewed well and seemed like a nice dude. I also just aesthetically love him because there's a throwback element.
What, the way that he puts his hair back and he sort of drinks and stuff?
Well, he's sort of just like a tall number 9 with his hair tied up, and it makes me think like...
We were hoping for that.
Yeah, I mean also the goal he scored against Sweden.
Big January signings. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang.
He was a January signing.
79 million euros. That's how much Pierre-Emerick... No way.
That's not right.
In 2018?
No,
that can't be right. No. That's not right.
To my mind, it was like £40 million.
Seamus Coleman.
Jesus, he's...
Oh, no, sorry. $79 million.
That's still on the upper end of what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Seamus Coleman, I think, has worked out to about 170 quid a game. Because he was signed for £70,000,
yeah.
Right?
86k.
86k, and he's played like 500 games. So it's 100. If he played 500 games at 86k, it's 160 quid a game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
It's pretty good game.
Minus wages.
Minus, to clarify, he's been making more than that every week since then.
My favourite, Seamus Coleman's very Irish.
Very Irish.
Very Irish. I once went to an event, I will tell the story at any opportunity. I once went to a EA Sports event, a FIFA event in Liverpool, and I sort of hosted the day, and weirdly, they had a couple of Everton players. It was the Everton training ground. I don't think it was by pure chance that the Everton players were there. But Seamus Coleman was there. And so Seamus Coleman is, we're having a great time. We're playing football and like we're then playing FIFA. And he does an interview with CBBC, I think it is. But for some weird reason, he doesn't want to do it. Like he doesn't want to do it early on or late on. And they go, and I was meant to do an interview immediately after with him, and he was going, I'll do that one because it was easy. Ours was like, stupid questions. And his was obviously CBBC, so it's not all that hard. The guy who interviewed him didn't know who Maguay Guy was, as in the Everton player Maguay Guy. And I think Seamus Coleman clocked onto this fairly early that the CBBC guy thought that he was referring to my gay guy. I can't remember. Now maybe he wasn't.
Yeah.
But it made for a hilarious interview. And he basically kept he kept going, who do you like? Oh, so, who do you like playing computer games with? And he goes, my gay guy. And he go, I'm always in the room with my gay guy. I'm always hanging out with my gay guy.
Me and my gay guy share a room on the way trips.
Genuinely, that's what it was like. And he was just going, great. Okay.
Thinking that Seamus Coleman was, how have I not heard that? The openly gay captain of Everton Football Club.
This is incredible.
Yeah, is this the scoop?
It was hilarious at the time. And I remember just being like, that's interesting. Why are you doing that to him? But he did. And maybe he was just good friends with my gay guy, but who knows?
I also think that's not the term you would use to describe someone every time you refer to them.
That was the other thing. Because his second name was obviously Guy, not gay.
Yeah.
So he used his whole name every time.
Yeah, whereas...
But maybe he's a two-namer. Because you can't just say my guy. Or Guy.
But in this universe, he would also have a first and last name independent of the ones he'd previously shared.
Right, yeah.
So he had options available.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah,
he could have gone Thomas at any stage. Actually, I've just named a gay Everton player, Thomas Hitzelsberger, inadvertently.
He was gay.
He was gay.
I thought you were going to say Gravison. But he's not. I don't think he's gay. I don't think he is. As much as you might like to profile people in such a way, I don't think we can. Thomas Souček, January. Yuri Tielemans, Monaco. Emmanuel Adebayo, Monaco to Arsenal. Good signing. 5 mil. Mikel Arteta, Sociedad to Everton. That's a very good signing.
None of these in the Nemanja Vidic yet. Luis Suarez is.
Jose Antonio Reyes. That's a good signing.
These are all good signings.
I think that the Reyes one feels like we didn't get it done in the summer, so we'll get it done in January kind of thing.
But can we top Suarez or Vidic?
Reyes passed away.
He did, yeah.
That's sad. That's very sad.
Can we top?
Well, I'm going to find out, and I think these two will be at the top of the list because there are pictures of them at the top of the profile. Ashley Young, Watford to Villa. That's a very good signing, though. That's just very functional for me. That's again not something where they go, we really need this guy. They just go, bam. Clint Dempsey from New England Revolution to Fulham.
Maybe just for the dink against Juventus.
Good goal. Branislav Ivanovic from Moscow to Chelsea. That's good. Jermaine Defoe from Toronto to Sunderland. Again, just seems a bit more like Defoe, sort of for functionality, sort of going, need to get out of here. And they go, but Jermaine, the project of spreading football.
So I've got one more. I've got one more stupid interlude. Jermaine Defoe. I've got a friend from Glasgow who, after the Europa League final, when Rangers lost it, was in London, in North London, walking around, and she was wearing a Rangers top, and this other lad was wearing a Rangers top and was on the phone. And said, oh, God, someone wants to say hello. She's never seen this man in her life. And they have a quick chat and she doesn't know who the guy is, just whatever. Oh, I'm sorry to hear the game didn't go well, whatever. Just a London accent. And she looked very whatever. It was Jermaine Defoe on the other end.
That's cool.
It was his agent.
Wow, that's really cool. Gary Cahill, January signing, to Chelsea.
Yeah, that was he scored a screamer for Bolton first day of the season against QPR. And Bolton were having a little run. And then Chelsea went, you'll be overshadowed by Terry for a decade, but we want you.
He's really good. And that's
really good. He was hard as nails as well. He was one of those last centre half.
Looked like he could have laid bricks. Felipe Coutinho, Inter to Liverpool, 14 mil.
Probably won your Champions
League. He also then left in January as well. Yeah, he did. He went to Barcelona.
And you signed Van Dijk in January.
We signed him in December, actually.
In December even?
Yeah, so I think Coutinho left in December technically. And we signed Van Dijk and Alisson with that money. Of course, Coutinho went on to win the Champions League. Liverpool went on to win the Champions League. Nemanja Matic, Benfica to Chelsea, big one. Robert Huth, big one. Bruno Fernandes, didn't realise that, but Sporting to Manchester United. Patrice Evra, Monaco to Manchester United. Luis Suarez, Ajax to Liverpool, $37 million. Nemanja Vidic, number 2. And number 1, Virgil van Dijk. So Virgil van Dijk tops Nemanja Vidic yet again.
But here's my argument. Vidic was like a snip from Red Star Belgrade.
Sure.
So it's got this quite cool, obscure energy. Whereas Van Dijk was like,
A
oh,
snip.
you're going to be the best. He was a relative snip, given the value. But it's like, you're going to be the best centre-half in the world.
Yeah, you should also thank us because we stopped him going to City.
Jesus Christ.
Think of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bellingham and because had Bellingham gone to City, it would have been really weird trying to follow cricket.
Right.
Like I like cricket in the summer sometimes during the Ashes.
But it would have been a bit miserable. We've gone quite a while on the podcast, so I have no idea what we're going to title this. But thanks a lot for joining us for this time. We really appreciate it. Jadon Sancho is on his way to Dortmund.
The graphic, sign up.
The graphic. Go and take a look at it. We appreciate you taking a look, and we will see you again right here on this channel, but probably the graphic again very soon. Goodbye.